Ja, hallo, mein Name ist Ralph Hünermann. Ich bin Gründer und Geschäftsführer der Odoskop GmbH. Und ich möchte euch heute etwas über, oh, I'm sorry, I need to switch to English, sorry. My name is Ralph Hünermann, I'm founder and CEO of Odoskop. And I'm gonna talk about situationalization and how to use situational data to optimize your online shop or your digital channels. So the main question is, what is situationalization? And the best thing is to compare it with personalization. So for personalization, imagine the question you need to offer a drink to George Clooney. Just think about it. What would you offer George Clooney for a drink? And in personalization, you might come up with, okay, hey George, do you want to have an espresso, as usual? But this is the person, right? You combine this person with Nespresso. But if you look at the situation, it might be that he just sits with his wife in a restaurant and wants to have a glass of champagne. Or he sits together with his buddy on a campfire and wants to have a glass of whiskey. So this is where the situation comes in. So the same person has different needs depending on the situation. If you compare yourself going to a supermarket, it's the same person, it's the same store, it's the same assortment. You go there, and depending on the situation you are there, you buy different things. For example, at lunchtime, you go there and buy a sandwich or a salad. If you go there in the evening, on a weekday, you might want to have some wine or beer or some pizza. And if you go there at the weekend, you do all the family stuff for the whole week. So the situation is defining what is relevant for you. It's not the person. The person itself, yes, is a different person, buys different things in the same situation, so you need to take the person data in combination with the situation data. But now let's just briefly think about why do we do personalization and why do we do situationalization? It's because we want to increase the customer experience. We want to make people sticky to our shops. So for that, PwC made a survey and they asked like 15,000 people, what is the most important thing for customer experience? What do you think? And also they ask, what is worth paying more? So it's not just, okay, it's nice to have, but what are you willing to pay for more? And the interesting thing is, personalization is somewhere in the midfield. So people don't want to be named like, hey Ralph, nice that you're back again, and this is our recommendation based on your past buyings, or of your buying history. But on the upper right, so where people are really will want to pay more for, is convenience and efficiency. And if you think about this, convenience and efficiency, the first thing is the checkout process. You don't want to put in your credit card numbers all the time, again and again. And this is something which Amazon made brilliant. So they made a perfect experience in terms of checkout process and delivery. So they have this one-click checkout, so it's very convenient and very efficient. But if it comes to inspiration, so if you don't know exactly what you want and you need to search something, like you want to buy a new t-shirt, for example, then you get lost in Amazon. Yeah? And here it comes to, we want to have a better efficiency and convenience when it comes to inspiration. So this is what we call the discovery phase. And the perfect place for discovery and inspiration is the product lists. So you look for a new t-shirt, you come up with the product list, and this is, for example, from a streetwear shop. They have like 5,000 t-shirts, and yeah, you come in there and you can just have a look for some t-shirts and get some inspiration. But what's the problem with the product lists? There are a lot of problems. So first of all, so I want to be inspired, but you know, they are very huge. Usually these product lists have like hundreds or thousands of products. So in this case, they have like 5,400 t-shirts in the lists. And even more, if you scroll down, it's listed on 65 pages. Who of you here in the audience flips pages anymore? No one does. We all look on the first page. This is what Google taught us over years. Everything which is relevant for you is on the first page. Don't flip to the second page. This is just crap. So this behavior we take over to the online shops, and we just look on the first page. We want to see the things on the first page. So if we don't find something on the first page, we leave the shop. We go away. We don't care about what's on the next 64 pages. So we don't look at all the products. We just look what's on the first page. So now the shop owner says, well, but we have these filters. You could use these filters. But come on, who of you ever uses these filters? I mean, the first filter ends up with 2 products, and the second filter ends up with 4,000 products. And you don't care about the brand. You want to get inspired. You might want to tell them, the shop, the size, okay, so only show me products which are available in my size, okay. But usually this does not end up with the 10 most relevant products for you. So it doesn't help you to get more relevance. And the biggest problem with the product lists is they are sorted in the same way for all users. So everyone gets exactly the same list. And this is what we call, it's an objective relevance, because it's the relevance of the shop and not of the user. So those products usually are listed for the top sellers. So what the shop sells the most. So they say, okay, we show you those products which are bought most often. But this is not what your individual relevance is all about. So the challenge is that you need to show the right products on the first page in order to show relevant content to the user. But now, here is what we call the dilemma of personalization. So every user wants to get relevant content. And the shop also wants to give relevant content to every user. But you only know 20% of them. So if you try to identify them, if you try to read out the cookies, you only know 20% of the users. The rest of the 80% you don't know, you have never seen before, you don't know anything about them. So how shall you put some relevant content in front of them if you don't know them at all? And this is even getting worse with GDPR, because you need to have a consent in order to store information about them. And here is where situational data comes in, because the situation determines the relevance. And if you think about, if you go to an online shop on a Monday morning, sitting in a tram, driving to your work, you just look for a nice discounted product you just want to catch. And on the other hand, if you sit there on a Sunday afternoon with an iPad on the couch with your loved ones and you just want to search a little bit, it's a completely different shopping behavior. So the situation defines what you're looking for. So now let's have a look, what is the available situational data we have? Because we don't know that the person is sitting on the couch with their loved ones, but we know a lot. So for example, we know how the user was inspired. So was he coming via Instagram, via Facebook, via Google, via bookmark, via newsletter? So we know a little bit of the context why he came to the website. We also know for sure the week time, so which is the weekday and the time of the day. We know the device, So we know, is he now currently on a tablet, is he on a smartphone, or is he on a desktop PC or a MacBook? And we also know, does he use the default browser of the Mac, like the Safari, or does he use a Chrome or Firefox, which he installed afterwards? This is a different user, with a different personality. So we also can read out the cookies. So if we know something about him, it's even better. Yeah. He needs to send the IP address, so we get a rough idea where he's located. Yeah. We know the country, we know the region. So in this case, for example, we see, okay, he's coming from Berlin, which is the metropolitan region. And if we know the region and the time, we also know the weather. And then on top of that, it goes further, what we call the real-time persona, which is your intention. So you have, with your shop, you might have some personas. So for example, the luxury shopper or the discount shopper. But all of us belong to different personas depending on the time you're looking. So sometimes we want to buy some high quality stuff. Sometimes we just want to have a very nice price and look for something which is very much discounted. And if we go away from shops, we also go to articles or some content. We might have different intention and might to be a different interest currently. So we're looking for different kind of things. So this is what we call the real-time persona. So now coming back to our product lists and applying these things, it's getting interesting. So now we see the t-shirt list and sorted for the top sellers of Germany. So this is something all of you can do with your online shop. You can just go inside your ERP system and just search for not just the overall top sellers, but the top sellers for a region, for example. So just look up the top sellers for Germany, and this is how the list looks like if we just look for the top sellers in Germany. And this is compared to the top sellers in France. So it's the same list, it's the same 5,000 t-shirts, and these are the top ones, and they differ. So in France, people buy different things than in Germany. It's not so surprising, and this is something which isn't valid for every shop. So the question is, why is no one doing this? Why is no one doing the top sellers for different regions? You know the region. You know what the top sellers in the different regions are. If we go deeper, this is, for example, in Saxony compared with Bavaria. So it's a huge difference. People buy different things in different regions. This is, for example, a Mac user compared with an Android user. It also differs. And this is an exercise every one of you can just do. Just go into your database. You have the data. You have it already. Just look it up, and you will see. This is, for example, the weekday, Sunday compared to Saturday. So now is the question, okay, we have these different attributes, and we want to know, I mean, we have this list, we see the list, and we say, yeah, it's different, okay. But this is something subjective. This is something we just feel like it's different. But we want to measure it. We want to have a statistical method. And there are statistical methods. So if you see the list, you could build like a histogram for the products. So you have the different products, and you just count the number of buyers who bought this product, and then you have a distribution for the different products. And now there are statistical methods to compare different distributions. And this is done by the contingency coefficient. And then you could also use on top of that, you can use a chi-square test in order to figure out if this is random. So the contingency coefficient tells you something about how different are distributions, and the chi-square test tells you, is the difference based on random or is this significant? And one thing we use in our company is the ASTA chart. And the ASTA chart, which you see here, shows the different attributes a user brings in, so which you could measure, and their effect on the products bought. So the higher the segment, or the bigger the segment is, the higher is the impact of this attribute. And this is something like a fingerprint of a shop. So every shop has a different ASTA chart, and with every shop, this differs a lot. So, and this tells you something about how do different attributes, and this is a statistical method, so you get a real idea of what's the impact of the different attributes of the users and the situational data. So now you could use this and calculate not only on a single dimension, but on a combination of all of these dimensions. And this is done as followed. So there is a user coming in with this situational data. So he's coming from Instagram, click there on a special banner or a special picture on a Monday at between 10 and 11 with an iPad. And he's located in Berlin, where it's currently rainy. And the real-time persona just tells us he's looking for discounted, complex printed T-shirts. So now we go in and look up in the past data similar persons, so persons in a similar situation. And this is done by real-time clustering. So we find the persons which were in a similar situation. And this is not the statistical twin. It's the statistical siblings, because they are similar. They are not the same. You won't find someone which is exactly the same. So you need to find the nearest neighbors of this person. And this differs the next hour. It's different. And it depends if, for example, how strong a different attribute is valued depends on the other attributes. So this is why it's done with real-time clustering. And now we have a group of people in the past, or sessions in the past, and we take this information to calculate how they interacted with the products. So we look it up, these persons, this real-time cluster, how did they interact with the different products, and this results in a relevant score for all the different T-shirts, for example. So, for example, we see that this group looked at the T-shirt. They put it in the basket afterwards. They bought it. Maybe they sent it back afterwards, a few days later. So we could take the returns as well into account. We could also measure things like putting it on a wish list, or like it, or share it, whatever you do with the product. So all the events, or clicking on the zoom function, all the events which are fired in combination with the product could be taken into account in order to figure out how relevant is this product for this group of people. And now you end up with a ranking which is done for this special group, which is corresponding to the current user. And with Otoscope, we can do this real-time clustering and this behavioral analysis within 20 milliseconds. So we could sort the lists of a category within 20 milliseconds, which is almost as fast as a cache. If you compare this now, here, for example, these are different situations, and these are the top 6 T-shirts. For example, this is in Baden-Württemberg with an Apple device and Chrome on a Friday night, compared to Saxony, Internet Explorer on Wi-Fi with on a Monday afternoon. Now, if you think about this, there is one pitfall. And this pitfall is there might be a product which worked very well in the past, but which is not available anymore. So it has a very high relevance score for the current user, but it's not on stock. So you don't want to show this on the first line or on the first page, because this is really something else than customer experience if you show products which are not on stock. So now you need to take product attributes into account to manipulate this score, which means that you look up the product, so you have the list of the products, and now you take the product attribute, is it on stock, is it available, and give this score a penalty in order to drop products which are not on stock. And if you're able to do this, you could also boost things. So you could not only give it a penalty if it's not on stock, but you could also go in and say, well, there are some products where I have a bigger margin because it's a private brand, so I would like to boost them a little bit. And then it's still data-driven, but those products of the private brand just bubble a little bit higher. So it's data-driven on one hand, and it's a collection control on the other hand. So you could do things like, okay, now I run a campaign for discounted products. We have summer sale, and just push the button, okay, boost discounted products, and people see more discounted products, but still data-driven. They see their discounted products, those discounted products which are relevant in their current situation. Or, for example, this is a nice one. It's a real story. There were the procurement department of a fashion shop, and they said, okay, 2018 is the year of the flowers. So they bought a lot of T-shirts and dresses with flowers, 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 flowers. The problem was in 2018, no one bought it. So they had it on stock. They had this huge amount of flower printed dresses on stock. So we helped them to boost these. They made a campaign. They sent a newsletter. Hey, we have these nice, great flower T-shirts, flower dresses and shirts and whatever. And then the shop wouldn't show them up, right? Because actually they were not of relevance. So they boosted the printed shirts, and the shop figured out which was the printed dress, the printed T-shirt for that situation, for that person, and helped them to sell it. So it was a combination of the campaign and the shop. So it's a campaign supporting thing. Sometimes these boosts play a very, very important role. So you could really help you to, they could help you to find the right business rule, or you say, okay, I want to do my sale, or I don't want to show any sales products. Yeah, they are very, very relevant, and they will be on top, but now they are discounted, and I don't want to show them at top. This might be a business rule you have in your shop, so you want to penalize discounted products. But this also might differ depending on what's going on outside, what's in the environment, how people think, what's going on. It's like going to Christmas, it's like going to Easter. And maybe you don't want to trim all these boosts all the time. So this is where we have a closed loop unsupervised learning on top of this, which helps you to learn the right boostings at the right time, and it adapts. So you cannot see in the data, what do I need to do to boost my conversion rate, for example, or to boost my basket value. This is not possible because in the data you only see what happened as I showed this. It's not written in the data what would have happened if I have shown this. This is not in the data. And the only way to figure this out is by testing. So what our system does is it tests different combinations and boosts all the time. So it's an instant testing of 10 to 20 different variations, and then learning out of this, which tests work well, and then you derive the next iteration and so on. This goes day by day. And then in order to learn what is good and what is bad, you define the KPIs to measure what is good and what is bad. So you can define, like, I want to increase my margin, I want to increase my KPI, my conversion rate or my basket value. So this is what we do with this closed loop. This is just an excerpt of our customers who use this already, just to get an impression. So it's really in use, and you find, meanwhile, you find a lot of shops which run this and which have situationalization on top of their personalization strategy. And here are some values which you could get with this kind. So the thing is, you see that on mobile, you have a much higher conversion rate boost than on desktop. This is because the screen is smaller. And it's more important what products to show. But you could also increase the basket size. And this is all done in a split test. So you always run a split test where you have a control group which is running without otoscope, and you have a group with otoscope, so you can directly compare. This is the architecture of the whole system. So this is a cloud. It's a cloud system with the REST API where you put your own data in. So we don't track any data. We don't collect data, and we don't combine data from different customers. We take the data you already have. We take the data in your warehouse. We take the data of your data lakes and just provide it for real-time clustering and real-time analysis to make the right decisions. So the idea is, this is the platform which you could use to implement different scenarios. So you could run it for product lists, you could run it also for landing page optimization, for recommendations, so you could use a recommendation with situational data. And on the right-hand side, you see this is the core of the platform. This is an in-memory grid technology. So it's a distributed shared nothing architecture where all the data you provide to us is in memory and could be crunched in this short time. And this is developed by our own, so you cannot buy something like this. And this is our core technology behind it. And it's all used via REST API, so you could use it via JavaScript. There is a JavaScript API. We are currently also building plugins for different shop solutions like Shopware, Oxid, Magento, Shopify, and so on. They are not all ready yet, but we're working on that. So if you want to have an implementation for a special shop system, talk to us, and we're going to build a plugin for that. So here are some use cases that you could use it for. Like we said, the most important thing is the product lists, because this is something every shop has a pain point in. But you could also use it for search results or also editorial articles. We do this with InStyle together, and we increase the page impressions by 20%. So people stay longer, click more articles, and this results in more ad impressions. You could use it for product recommendations, but also for emails. So you could, if you assemble an email, you could also ask our REST API, what should I send this person? It depends on the data you put into our system. So you have really personal data in the system, and you can ask for peers of a different person. Yeah, so you say, okay, this person I know from the last convention, so what is interesting for people from the last convention, for example? So you could build your own rules. You could build your own systematic here. Yeah. The last point is maybe interesting. You could generate emotional content. I don't know if you're familiar with AX semantics. It's roboter journalism. They could create content based on parameters, and we could define what is the emotion of this article. So we could generate different texts, human readable texts, depending on the situation. And so you could put this in emails, for example, for different users, different texts describing the same articles. So this might be of interest. Yeah. Now I'm happy to answer your questions.
Hi.
Hi.
How many users, unique users, do you need to get out some useful data of this?
Well, currently we approach the big shops. So we say you need at least 100,000 visits a month. So this is a rule of thumbs. Yeah. But we actually also serve smaller shops already. It's just like you cannot have these very granular peer groups in this case. Yeah. For example, we had a very small shop, but they were selling their products in France, in Germany, in Switzerland, and just sorting it for Switzerland, for Germany, and France. It's very simple. You could do it your own with some simple rules, yeah. But this system helps you to do it easily and to have some boostings in between. So it helps you to control your product lists better. So you could use it also for smaller shops, but then it's not that big magic.
Hi, thanks for this nice talk. So, are you using any AI or machine learning mechanism to, make some decision making of the data?
What do you think? Is this machine learning?
Well, it
How
looks
would you
like
define machine
artificial
learning?
intelligence based on the existing data analysis.
So we derive decisions, we derive knowledge out of data.
Right.
So from my perspective, this is machine learning. And the way that I can describe it in such a way as I did does not mean that this is not machine learning, because there's no deep learning network included. The problem is you cannot run a deep learning network on this because you run in the course of dimensions here. You have a lack of training data. You have like 10 billion different combinations, but you might only have like 10 million users. Yeah? So you cannot really train a network here. And this is why we chose this real-time clustering mechanism. And if you want to call it AI, you can do. It's the unsupervised learning on top of it, which helps you to adapt and figure out what is the right tuning of your shop right in the moment, right today. And this changes. Yeah? For example, we had a customer which were running completely in automatic mode, so they were not interacting manually. And we just observed what the system is doing. And it was going towards Christmas, and the system penalized discounted products very strong. So there were no discounted products seen at all. This was right before Christmas. And then Christmas was over, and it switched like 180 degrees, and all the discounted products popped up, because now all the people came in and were buying with their coupons, which they get as a gift on Christmas, and they wanted to get as much as possible. So that was the situation of the people out there, and the system adapted to this. And it was quite fast, and this was fascinating to see. So,
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Hey, have you gotten any user feedback? In the sense of, if I just watch myself, I come in the morning, I look for something, I found it, I forget about it, come back next day, and I want to find this again, but because now, different day, different behavior, it's not where I think it should be, and so I'm a little frustrated.
yeah, this is something you need to define. Yeah, I mean, this is something we need to discuss. If you want to run the project, we help you to implement this. This is exactly the thing you need to answer. I mean, do you really want to have the same list for every person every time on any device? Or do you want to increase your revenue by showing the most relevant at the moment? And then you need to exactly address this problem. So you might want to have some additional functionality in your shop, which is, for example, your last seen products. You could do this automatically. Just store it in the shop, in a cookie or in a local storage, and then you just show it at the bottom line or at the top. This depends on how you would like your shop to be, or you can also run an A/B test on this. You could have a wish list for things like this. Some shops have this heart. You could just click like this. So you need to train your users on this, and maybe make it transparent. You could also say, hey, we use situational data in order to show you the most relevant content in your current situation, and if you want to find your product tomorrow again, just mark it here. And this is another great thing, because it helps you to get even more relevant scores for your product. So it's a whole strategy you need to follow, and this depends from shop to shop. Okay? Any more questions? Yes.
So my question is, situationalization.
So just say situation.
Situation.
Like
so
person,
like,
yeah?
yeah,
Personalization and
okay,
situationalization.
right, the case is, it's like a first step on the way to personalization. So
Yeah, yeah.
Can you imagine to adapt your system to use it for personalization when you actually know the users that are coming in and so on? Or it should be a different module used for that? Or
Yeah, we actually do it already. So situationalization is always on top of personalization. It's always a combination. Yeah. But the good thing is, the pure situationalization you could also use for those you don't know, which is a huge part. I mean, there are a lot of people coming to an online shop, just want to discover and want to get some inspiration. And this is the way you could get them. But as soon as you have personal data, you could combine it. And you could use, like, I know the age, I know the gender, I know the buying history, things like this. So you could build personas out of this. So you have this static persona on one hand side, and you have this real-time persona. Okay, this middle-aged man is now in the mood of looking for discounted products. And the next time, the same person comes in and looks for luxury goods. So we do this, for example, with InStyle. We have exactly this long-term person data and short-term person data. May I have a question to you all, the audience? Who already uses like different segments in order to show a different shop? Like, for example, a different region shows different products, a different time. I'm not talking about now it's Christmas, I show different products, but a different data automatically. Is anyone doing this currently? What kind of data you're currently using?
I'm not really having my own shop. I'm working for Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and they have they collect data in the background about products bought, when they bought, revenue, margin, collect this, and basically feed this back into the search index. And based on that, they basically can boost and deboost whatever the search data based on previous day and things like that.
Sure.
And this comes kind of automatically for every customer, so they don't have to customize this itself. They just basically have to say, I want to use it. And you can basically get an additional sorting option you can make default if you like.
But this is personalization. So you need to know a buying history of this person.
No, it's just also in general. So even so you don't know the person, you have to collect the data about best-selling products and things like that, and you can reshuffle your product search listing result pages based on that. So it's not that they take in what you are at this moment, kind of the Apple device thingy. They basically say, okay, yesterday this sold well, let's
so I
push
boost
it up. Or this didn't sell, or I want to have these products which didn't sell, always on the top, things like that you can configure. So it's not completely situational because it doesn't have any input, but it has basically output from the previous days, which are...
So this is, but this is done for all users in the same way.
You can disable it if you like. For instance, if you log on and you see something different. But other than that, yeah, it would be for every user.
So this is what actually we see with many shops. They have a very, very clever way of calculating the lists. So they have a relevance scoring for the product, but it's an overall scoring. Yeah. And we, with this situational approach, we can really beat them in terms of conversion, click-through rate, and so on, by just putting this on top. We could also use the score of the shop. So if you have a relevance score, like for this product was very well yesterday, for example. So you have a relevance score for the product internally, which you run through some AI or whatever. We could use this score on top and put the other one, combine it. Yeah. So we do this as well. We also use this for search result sorting, because if you search, for example, for a hoodie, and there is the name hoodie somewhere in the description, and some other products, it's in the tagline, then you want to show those on the top and those where it's just in the product description. So like, this is a jeans which also looks nice for hoodies. This we don't want to put up because it was a very good selling product. So we could use this sorting score and keep it in the ranking. So just sort the ones with a similar sorting score. All right. Thank you very much. I hope I gave you some inspiration, and I'm happy to get in touch with you.